Hi guys, just hanging out with Prue, the massive Prue. My kids are resting and I was just kind of alone with my thoughts, and I thought it might be fun to share some experiences of mine with you all. Now there's a cat fur in my eye. It's your fault. About paranormal experiences. Jeez, cat. Now, I haven't had too many in my life. Just a handful of them. I'm sorry, she is shedding so much. Hey, baby. And I just thought that they might be fun to share with you guys, and maybe once again spark a fire to maybe get other people to potentially share some paranormal or spiritual experiences that they may have had. Now for me, I differentiate. I do think there's a difference between a paranormal experience and a spiritual experience. I do think that they can overlap, but I don't think it's always necessarily the case. Oh my god, Prudence! Furify my face. So for me, I guess the best way to start is to maybe start chronologically. When I was little, I used to hate sleeping in my own room. It was something that went on for years. It was a gigantic struggle. I could not stand being alone in my room at night. My parents tried everything they could. Now, as I've gotten older, I started to realize that part of this is due to the fact that I am a highly sensitive person, which I actually just discovered through therapy this year. So, and that answered a lot of questions about myself. And if anybody ever wants me to do a video on what it's like to be an HSP and what that means, I can certainly do that. Why am I always clearing my throat every single time I get on camera? But anyway, so I mean, I think the reason why being HSP had something to do with it is the fact that my older brothers would watch a scary movie and it would just affect me way too strongly, because that's kind of what being an HSP is, or at least part of it. Let me mute my phone here. Just, don't tell me I need to unlock you. You can function. There, arguing with technology. I'm rather techie and I still argue with technology. But regardless of the fact, as I got older, I started to realize that it might not have just been that, and that I really do think I maybe was seeing things. So what I would see at night were shadows, and they weren't just shadows that maybe headlights of a car would have projected on the wall of my room. I really saw what can only be described as shadow people. And I don't, as I've gotten older and I've analyzed this more and more, I don't think that they were there to hurt me. I think I was a kid and I was scared. So I think as you get older, you are told to forget about this stuff. You're told to look at it logically and ignore it, and, you know, all that bull crap. And I think to a degree that's merited, but I also think that it teaches us to ignore our intuition and it stifles it. So, the other experiences I had in childhood is my parents, we went vacationing and camping kind of all over the West Coast, because I'm from Washington State, and so we went all over Oregon, all over Idaho, all over Montana, all over California, and of course all over Washington itself and some of Utah. And we were at a ghost town, coincidentally, in Montana. And I had wandered away from my parents. I think I was about 8 or 9. And I wandered away from my parents as they were looking at some of the other old buildings, and I found the schoolhouse. Well, there was a swing hanging from a tree in front of the schoolhouse, and there was really nobody there. Everyone was kind of further back looking at other buildings. And of course, naturally, because I was a kid, I was thinking, hey, a swing, this is awesome. So I go and sit down on the swing, and before I start to move myself, something moves me. I could actually feel hands on my back. And I remember looking back thinking like, oh, it's one of my brothers. There was nobody there. But the strangest thing was I wasn't scared. I felt comforted, like whatever was with me just wanted to play. And I remember telling my family about it, and they just thought I was nuts, which, but I mean, they're like, you're 8, 9 years old, you gotta be making this up, right? So, but I knew what I felt, and that stuck with me forever. And throughout my teen years, I didn't really have much experiences, at least things that I think stuck with me. It was mostly just profound dreams. Those started to really happen more and more as I delved into my path, which I've been on since I was 15. And that got stronger when my grandfather passed away. I would have really intense dreams about him. And as I've mentioned before, he came to me in my dreams the night before my mom passed. So that was really intense. And in my final words to my mother, I had told her that he was waiting for her because I just knew. But there were a few things that happened in my early 20s that were kind of interesting. So my husband and I started dating when we were 20, and now we're 32. We've been married. We've been together for almost 12 years and married for almost 7. We have 2 kids. My husband is an atheist, but he's really kind of open to anything. His general standpoint is, as long as it's not harming anybody, he believes that people are free to believe whatever they want, which helps with what I believe quite a bit, and we mesh pretty well in that sense. But when we first started dating, it was one of the first times that we went out together. We stayed out at a friend's house till about 4 o'clock in the morning here in Minnesota. And I was still living in Washington. We met long distance on World of Warcraft. I love saying that. It's so funny. But we stayed out late until about 4 in the morning, and we were heading back over a bridge that went over the river here in Minnesota. And I just remember seeing this shadowy figure standing on the bridge it looked like they were wearing kind of a trench coat and a hat, and that was strange because the shadowy figure kind of remained there as the car drove past, and I continued to stare at this shadowy figure. It didn't interact with me, it just continued to stare out over the bridge. So I was trying to figure out for the longest time if anyone had ever passed away on the bridge, and I've yet to find any information. But I ended up telling my husband about it much later because we had first started dating and I didn't know what he would think of me. And he laughed at me in the sense of like, why didn't you say something I would have been interested to hear? Hi, Kitty. But, and then the other kind of profound experience that I had was another one in the car with him, and this was probably about 5 or 6 years later. My husband's family has a cabin in Wisconsin, and we decided to head back to where our apartment was, which is here in the city I live now, late one night. So it's about 11 o'clock at night, and we're driving through rural Wisconsin, and I see this small, almost childlike, shadowy figure run across the road, and it runs through one headlight, but then when it gets to the other side of the car, it disappears before it hits the other headlight, which was just bizarre. And I remember being so shocked that my husband was driving, and I was like, what was that? And he's just like, what did you see? And I described what I saw, and my husband goes, well, maybe because you're witchy, you're more inclined to see this kind of stuff. And I just remember kind of being shocked by that comment, because he's usually the first person to be like, well, logically it could have been blah, 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 which, he keeps me grounded. But I just remember being like, really? You think that? Like, so maybe he saw it too and just wasn't sure what to think, because he never actually clarified, and I actually think he maybe has been afraid to clarify. But still, it was an interesting experience to say the least. And the times that I have been in the presence of an actual haunting, per se, the energy is rather distinct, and it's hard to miss. They describe the whole hair standing up on the back of your neck thing. It's pretty legit from my experiences. It's exactly that. It's very tingly. It's just distinct. It's strange. And it's my belief that it's more, these are spirits who either haven't crossed over and are reactive or intelligent haunting, or I know in some paranormal research they discuss a residual haunting, which is like an energetic or an energy imprint on a certain area, and that can be a very distinct energy. So I'm not sure why I just felt like sharing these experiences and maybe sparking like a paranormal discussion, because I do feel that we as witches do tend to have a little bit of a stronger link to this stuff. So I don't know. Let me know if you guys had any experiences. I'm really curious to hear them, and you know, or even bye Prue. Bye Felicia. I'm gonna have to take this blanket off now. Oh, I always put my blanket on my legs if I'm wearing shorts because she scratches me. She's a klutz. She doesn't mean to. She's just really klutzy. Like, cats are supposed to be graceful. That is my son, if you hear him. But yeah, my cat is not graceful. Anyway, so let me know if you guys had any interesting experiences in the paranormal sector. That just makes me think of Ghostbusters, which, by the way, is one of my favorite movies ever. But blessed be, you guys. Happy Monday.